Hi, I'm Michael Parker, CEO and founder at Forge Fitness and Nutrition Coaching. In this video, we're going to dive into oscillation, which is essentially a habit resistance. Now be on the lookout for the pre-order notices related to the late spring of 2020 release of my coming book on how to create sustainable fitness and nutrition success. This video material is essentially a preview to the contents of my soon-to-be published book. So let's just dive in right away into habit and resistance oscillation. Now we tend to resist change or adding a new habit for several reasons. Even though we all know that change is inevitable, we tend to resist it because it's going to pull us out of our homeostasis. It removes predictability and it instigates fear. But let's talk about homeostasis first, as that is one of the most interesting aspects in my estimation, because I would say that it affects many of our internal systems. Homeostasis is simply a state of stability physically, mentally, and emotionally. Or environmentally, of course. Now, the biggest homeostatic conflict that I see with many new clients, and I would say that most people who are starting a fitness program, is oscillation. It's essentially a massive overcorrection. And that inevitably leads to negative feedback and some kind of regression. And the most common example is that of a crash or fad dieter. I'll give you an example. For a few years now, I've worked with a young lady, and she used to go through periods of, well, slightly extreme oscillation. And it was based on what she was seeing on social media. Now, while her tendency to suddenly want to uproot her entire training approach and her food program has diminished pretty greatly over the few years, it's still something that she has to be conscious of. Now, when we first met, she was just coming out of a several-month stint with the ketogenic diet. And she had just spent the last 3 months prior to that on this ultra-restrictive low-fat diet where she essentially eliminated all fat other than fish. There was no nuts, no grains, no legumes, no seeds, no oils, no red meats, no poultry, no eggs, no avocado, nothing. And from a dietary standpoint, that is the total opposite in food choice reversal in less than 6 months. And at the time, she had an estimated sedentary output of, I would say, is approximately 1,900 calories, but she was only taking in like 800 to 1,000. And that was about the same amount of consumption on both the super low-fat diet and then the ketogenic diet. She kind of kept the same caloric. Now, during the time that she was on the low-fat diet, she was also doing an extremely aggressive and popular Olympic lifting program 3 days a week. And her probable output from that was probably 2,300 to 2,600. And like most people who are not properly conditioned for this trendy Olympic workout style, she inevitably got injured. And this, of course, resulted in a decrease in activity. And in her convalescence, she started following a social media influencer who was essentially a professional exerciser and advertiser. And it was all about the ketogenic diet and the dumb booty workouts. You know, the ones where these girls focus almost exclusively on building the butt. They do like a 500 million squats, step-ups and lunges and so on with that super excessive low back arch, because you just got to make sure that it's Instagram worthy, get as much intention as possible. So anyway, she ditched that aggressive workout style, the Olympic one, and the low-fat diet and went super all in on the keto body, ketogenic workouts and all that stuff. And over 6 months, she went from one extreme to another and her composition barely changed at all. The only success that she was having was making herself absolutely miserable. She started to resent fitness and inevitably she just crashed. Now she would, of course, gain weight, she'd freak out, and then she would oscillate or overreact to another fad program. Same formula as every other fad diet, which is caloric restriction, the demonization of a macro, and an overemphasis of a single food source. That's essentially all it is. And she was referred to me by another client, and I had to spend weeks building trust with her because she just expected to jump into another fad diet. She wanted instant results. Now, but the problem was that we did not have a proper baseline to work with, and her impatience was circumventing the usual application of moderation and consistency in program design and nutritional intake. She wanted it crazy. Now, I suggested to her that we hit the reset button and just trust the process. She had nothing to lose after all. And after some gentle mindset coaching, she decided to find some balance. No, and I just basically started her with a simple, calorically appropriate, nutritiously dense set of menu suggestions. And they were, oh gosh, if I remember, they were approximately 1,400 or 1,500 calories. And I like the 40-30-30 split, 40 carbs, 30 protein, 30 fats as a baseline. But I also built her a very structured fitness program associated to her nutritional intake, and it was periodized. And we could validate results, and I could apply stressors in a very systematic way so that I could predict an outcome. Of course, she melted down at the idea of eating over 1,000 calories and not being able to switch her workouts to something crazy each week. Because, see, she had been thoroughly brainwashed by the media and idiotic social media trainers that are peddling garbage, and they're based on the fears and the hopes of vulnerable people. Anyway, more than that, she had never really built any healthy habits at all based on discipline, but rather they are on a short-term obsession. And I'll cover obsession versus discipline in another video. It's in my book. Anyway, the point is, she had oscillated so many times that she had never really formed any constructive habits. Now, what she did do is she created a very unhealthy relationship with food, and she grew to despise exercise. Moreover, she was afraid of change. Her homeostasis was oscillation, and by causing her to slow the distance that pendulum swung caused her fear. Now, it's extreme, and her mind cannot reconcile potential effectiveness without extremity. So she thought fitness was all about starving all day, and working out was supposed to be absolutely dreadful. Now, on the bright side, the proper application of exercise and more responsible energy intake resulted in her finally dropping several percent body fat. Actually, in just a few months, it happened pretty rapidly for her when she calmed down. Her lean tissue went, I think it was 72 pounds to about 77 in 4 months. Now, she has tendencies, right? So she comes to coaching calls and she'll question new workouts and all that. And that's good though. And that's also just part of her personality. So remember, oscillation is not ideal. Extremes are not ideal. You want to find balance and a practical approach for long-term sustainability. So don't be afraid of not doing something extreme. Just be confident and do what's right.